here we are today with Miss Mariet Eksteen, PhD from South Africa, precisely from the South African Pharmaceutical Professional Society. And she's also an advocate who currently serves as the head of advocacy, communication, and marketing at the International Pharmaceutical Federation, based in The Hague, Netherlands, a position she assumed quite recently, and I'm sure she can share with us later details of that. She holds a B Pharm and a master's in pharmacoeconomics from the Northwest University, as well as a PhD in health professions education from the University of the Free State. Before joining FIP, she spent 8 years at the Pharmaceutical Society of South Africa as a professional development and support officer, managing national and international projects, and also served as a senior lecturer at Northwest University and as a counselor for the South African Pharmacy Council. A passionate advocate for patient safety and pharmacist empowerment, she was also invited by the WHO to deliver a message on World Patient Safety Day in 2020. I will pass the floor for Ms. Mariet Eksteen to perhaps introduce herself a little bit further to our listeners and viewers. Mariet, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's indeed a privilege and an honor to be with all of you today. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. I think you covered all of the professional accolades. So my name is Mariet Eksteen. I am a South African pharmacist. And I think that the one thing you didn't mention in my bio is that when I'm not involved in pharmacy, I like running and hiking in nature. Now you know everything of me.
Thank you very much for continuing on the introduction. Passing on into the first question of today's interview. From community pharmacy to academic to FIP head of advocacy, what has this journey brought you here, or how did this journey brought you here? So if you can explain to us, how has it been for you to start from somewhere and go into another place entirely from where your career started?
Thank you very much. Yes, I think to that list you can also add hospital pharmacist, because that's actually my first post qualification or post graduation position. So I've actually been everywhere except in manufacturing and in wholesale and distribution. So guess where I'll be going next, eh? But I think in general, my journey has been paved actually by opportunities that came my way, and which I don't take for granted, and I'm very blessed for it. Because when I was a hospital pharmacist, that was in my first year after graduation, and after becoming a registered pharmacist in South Africa. It's a compulsory year that we refer to as community service, and we do it in government facilities. So during that time, I was a hospital pharmacist, and I think it was about 1 or 2 months into the year when a community pharmacy owner approached me to join his community pharmacy in the next year. And so then I went, that was in my hometown here in South Africa. So the next year I moved there to practice as a community pharmacist. Definitely very valuable lessons that I've learned there on patient service and being a member of the healthcare team, because this is in a rural community, so it's not in an urban setting. And then while I was at this community pharmacy, the university reached out to me and say they have a vacancy as a senior lecturer, and would I please apply for the position, which I did. And luckily I was privileged to receive that position. So then I moved back to Northwest University to be there as a senior lecturer. And that's also where I commenced with my PhD at that stage. And then while I was at the university, the Pharmaceutical Society of South Africa contacted me and say they have a vacancy, and would I mind joining their team, which I did then as the professional development officer. And then while I was there, FIP has a vacancy for which I've applied, and that's where I find myself today, more than a year already, at the International Pharmaceutical Federation. So your question was, how did all of this start, or how does things like this happen? And I think when you start your career, or when you are early on in your career, you don't necessarily know exactly where you will be after 15 years or 20 years, or maybe what that final position will be where you will serve before you go into retirement. But what you need to know at this stage is the direction where you want to go in. For me, to work at the Pharmaceutical Society of South Africa has always been my dream job. Since I was a master's degree student, I couldn't imagine a better place to work. So it was really my luck that I've ended up there. Never ever that I thought I would becoming part of the FIP team, and here I am, and it's absolutely a privilege, and it's possibly not the end. So it's exciting to know what would be the next phase of my career be.
Thank you for this first answer. Maybe it's going to be industry or somewhere closer to that. It can be a quite the career choice to finish on. So going on into the next question, coming off of this introduction about your whole career, you completed a PhD and a master's in pharmacoeconomics while building an international profile within FIP from early on. The questions are: how did you manage to grow academically and professionally at the same time? And what advice would you give an early career pharmacist in that particular regard?
Great. Thank you. I think it's often small, subtle choices that has really big impact. So let me use an example. So in South Africa, we have our pharmacy degree is a 4-year degree, which is then followed by internship, and then, as I've mentioned in my previous answer, a 1-year community service. So internship, for instance, as an example, is compulsory. You have to do it. But there's one of two ways you can do it. You can work 1 year in a pharmacy, whether it's a hospital, community, or manufacturing pharmacy, or you can do a 2-year internship at a university while you complete your master's degree. So yes, it took me 1 year longer to complete my internship, but I walked away with a master's degree, which, by the way, was the entry requirement to be appointed as a senior lecturer when I returned there about 3 or 4 years later. So when I made the decision to do an academic internship, never that I thought I will return as an academic pharmacist. But at the time, between the two, I thought that one is going to give me more mileage than only the 1-year internship. If I can use an example of my PhD journey, at that time I was appointed as a senior lecturer at the Northwest University, and the Northwest University specifically is very precise that all the staff must have PhDs and must be experts in their field. So even in my interview for the senior lecturer position, they did make me aware that I do know, or I do realize, that I will be expected to complete a doctor's degree, which I said, no problem. So if I was never at an academic institution or academic staff, maybe a PhD would have never crossed my path, but it did. The benefit is, while I was an academic staff member, is that I have a lot of resources to my or accessible to me, whether it's extended leave to do my research, or it's access to resources. So my employment supported my choice a lot in completing my PhD. So that's the first point I want to make, is that sometimes it's subtle opportunities. So if I can add to that, maybe, when I was halfway through my PhD, the Pharmaceutical Society of South Africa approached me with a vacancy. Now, as I've mentioned before, that was my dream job, but I was also halfway through a PhD. And although it was heartbreaking, I had to reject the offer from the PSSA because I was halfway through a qualification, which is the longer term one of the two. So I decided to stay with the university and complete my PhD. And guess my luck, 1 year later, they approached me again. And their words were, we assume you're finished with your PhD now, and that we've waited for you. So now we hope you'll join our team. So for me, that is small choices that I had to make, which really paid off well. The second point I want to make, how to academically and professionally grow at the same time, is, so that was more how I academically grown. But professionally, you must understand that there's different phases in your career. So I assume that, well, I can recall myself after graduation, you are trying to settle down into this routine of being a working pharmacist now. I call it the honeymoon phase. You are so glad that you're done with studies and learning and exams and proving your competence. You are now a registered pharmacist and you just want to relax and do what you need to do. But sooner rather than later, you need to approach the next phase of your career. And I refer to that as your growing phase. And that's a good 10 to 15 years. And my advice is that what I did is I took on every opportunity that came my way, whether it was a course, whether it was an opportunity to volunteer, whether it was being part of my association on a regional level, anything to build skill, to witness what people are doing, learn from them, ask questions. And that process of professional development, you should almost see like an investment. So when you make an investment and you put 100 euros to an account, you won't see the interest at first. It might be a few cents, maybe at most €1 or 10. But if you look at that investment after 15 years and you see that compound interest, then it's when it's a significant investment. So my advice would be to the ECPG colleagues is, luckily, you are the driver of your career vehicle. And don't wait for a better time or more time or someone else or something else to first fall in place, and then you will start excelling in your career. I always say, today is the best day. Now is the best time. I am the best person, and whatever I have available is the best circumstances. And from there, you take it on, because after this growing phase, there's a different phase that's going to come, and that's going to require other things from you. Or you will be a more senior person in your career, and that would not be the time to grow. You should have done that in your growing phase in your career.
The last phrase was really straight to the soul of a young person. So thank you for that, and thank you for sharing your personal and professional struggles and how they linked up with you and how you managed to take a lesson out of this and take a takeaway message out of this. So thank you very much for that. Going on into the next section of our interview, which would be the advocacy communication and the pharmacy profession as a whole, precisely what concerns the evolving voice of pharmacy on the global stage. You have represented FIP within the international community. You had the chance to be present at the World Health Assembly, and now you lead FIP's global communication strategy. How can early career pharmacists contribute meaningfully to advocacy, even without having an institutional backing?
Great. I think it's so applicable, and I'm so happy that we discuss it, because I think this can be confusing. So let me go back many years, which is maybe way before you guys were in school. So back in the day, when we didn't have digital platforms, we didn't have WhatsApp platforms. To be honest with you, social media didn't exist when I was a pre-grad student. Facebook Facebook came to the surface when I was a master's degree student. So we went through studies without things like Facebook and WhatsApp. So back in the day, the only way people could get information is they had to come together in person. So over the years, things like email came our way, and then obviously with the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of things changed. A lot of people adapted into this digital era, and now all of a sudden we are more connected than ever. And I think, to be honest, every holder of a pharmacy degree is already an advocate. And the reason I'm saying it is go and have a look at the competency standards for your degree in your country. And I can promise you, one of the behavioral statements or one of the competency standards should be that you are an advocate. Now, often one can think that an advocate is only someone at the World Health Assembly, or it is only someone that is doing a television or a radio interview on a certain topic. But it's actually easier than ever for anybody to be an advocate. And you don't necessarily need institutional backing. You just need a cause to believe in and a purpose that drives you, and you're good to go. So I think in this generation, there are people, well, influencers, that makes a career out of it, maybe without any university qualification. We have social media to use. There's things like YouTube channels. So honestly, to be an advocate for the profession is accessible to everybody. What you need to do to become an advocate is really very easy. 5 steps. Number 1, raise your hand. Just show to us that you are willing to do something. Then you're halfway there. Raise your hand. Secondly, show up. Show the people around you that you are reliable and that they can count on you. As I've mentioned, know what it is that you believe in and why you believe in it, because that's going to show your character. Then also a good place to join other advocacy efforts is to join your association, whether it's internationally like ECPG, or it's in your country, or it's in your region, or in your community. But that's the place where you're going to make the difference. And then lastly, advocacy is about giving. It's not about receiving anything back. So you're advocating on behalf of a profession, or a patient, or a service. So you are not advocating for yourself or on behalf of yourself. So I hope that inspires everybody to take up the role of advocate. And maybe it's just hosting a health awareness day in your rural pharmacy, wherever you are in the world. Or maybe you have a passion for a certain disease or a certain medication and you start distributing information. All of that is advocacy at the end of the day.
Thank you very much for this particular point and for stressing the fact that advocacy is also about sharing information, giving information, and giving, let's say, help instead of expecting something to be returned to you. It's a one-way street, if you can say that, but the benefit is that more people can learn, more people can grow, and it's affecting the community, be it the rural community, the city community, or even your own community within your country. Let's not forget that it's a community pharmacy, that most pharmacists are community pharmacists, so we are here in our community to help them and assist them in any way we can. So thank you very much for this particular point. Going into the third section regarding the workforce development and professional growth, specifically building the next generation of pharmacists. So after more than quite a bit of time let's say after more than quite a bit of time as the FIP's global lead for workforce development, and taking into consideration all of your experience within the federation, what does a future-ready pharmacy workforce look like? Precisely, a future-ready pharmacy workforce look like? What would you advise it to be comprised of? What would you advise it to be centered around? And how should it operate?
Right. That is so important, and I really recall instances where in areas that I've worked, people were not future ready, and it comes with a price. Let me be honest with you. I think when we looked maybe at the COVID-19 pandemic, if you were not able to adapt very quickly, you had problems. Whether it was the way you conducted business, whether it was the way you distributed medicine, or whether you were a global leader and the way you make decisions for your country. So I think to start with, the past is important. It often gives us context. It shows us where we come from. But we should, in general, leave the past in the past, and not drag it with us. I recall here in South Africa, we had quite a substantial legislation change in 2004. So it's 22 years ago, and many pharmacies in South Africa still struggle to accept that change, and it's holding you back in life. So the past is there. It should give you context, but you should move. It should not hold you back, and you should avoid referring to how we did things in the past, because, as I said, it's just there for context. The second thing of a future-ready workforce is that as soon as possible, you should learn to navigate change, because change is the only constant in life. So the easier you learn the skill to navigate through changing times, regardless how big or small it is. And the second thing that goes with it is also rejection. And I'm not referring to relationship or romantic rejection. Sometimes you come with an idea which is maybe not accepted by your senior or by your manager. And that rejection could kill passion. So learn how to navigate change and how to navigate rejection. And then for me, the third important point is we live in extreme economic difficult times, and it's been like that for a while. And I don't think it's gonna change soon. So many years ago, most people worked for the government, and most people worked for a salary, and they were happy with the salary, and the salary was market related, and they could live comfortably from salaries. But governments does not have money anymore. And one of the biggest campaigns we run at the moment is that governments should not replace health professionals with health workers, because it's not the same. Our qualification is not the same, our expertise are not the same, but the main reason for that is cost-cutting measures. So a future-ready healthcare professional today must be exceptional in entrepreneurial skills. When I was towards the end of my school journey, and it was time for me to make a career decision, my dad or my parents told me that I can become anything I want. Like, there's no specification, there's no preference from their side. I don't have to become one of the two careers that they had in their life. I can choose anything, but there's two criteria. The first criteria was, whatever it is that I want to be, I must be able to do it anywhere in the world, in the country, anywhere. In other words, I should not be limited or restricted to only an urban area, or an area close to a harbor, or an area where only old people or young people is. So anywhere. And the second criteria was my career choice should enable me to be an entrepreneur. And I should not be only depending on an employer for a job. And that was applicable 25 years ago. And I want to tell you it's still applicable today. I see a lot of unemployment also in my own country. And it's not that there's no jobs or opportunities, there's just no jobs in government. And someone will label themselves rather as unemployed than not willing to work in private sector or not willing to open my own business or take an entrepreneurial risk. So to upskill yourself with a little bit of business information and skills will do no harm. And going forward, I think skills like that will be more and more important to foster and to take note of.
Thank you very much for your insights regarding this particular question, and also regarding the common factor that we found practically everywhere, the lack of job opportunities, or simply the requirements that are continuously evolving and continuously asking new skill sets from the younger generation. But having entrepreneurial skills is something that is transferable everywhere. So thank you for pointing this out clearly. Following up on this particular question and following up on the on your insights with the next question, which will closely tie into what you previously talked about. Many early career pharmacists, specifically in low and middle income countries, have limited access to structured professional development. What practical steps can they take to grow despite those frontiers and those barriers that are ahead of them?
I think this is such a broad question, and I think this question can be interpreted in so many ways. So let's break it down a bit. So obviously, I've mentioned it. I'm from South Africa, so coming from a middle income country myself, coming for sure from the poorest continent in the world, I think this is definitely a reality that we often face, and it's more difficult in some countries than other. When you refer to structured professional development, I think we need to understand, some people might refer to structured as, daily workshops, meaning you need to come together to a central point to have a workshop or attend a structured course where you will write an exam at the end or attend classes, etc., etc. Globally, whether it's a first world country or not, I think that structured approach is becoming less and less favorable. I saw many times in South Africa, and I live in a capital city in South Africa, that even we have a professional, continuous professional development event in Pretoria, and people living 3 blocks away will not come for whatever reason. They don't want to leave the family at home, or they're tired after a long day, or this is just not a priority. So even in urban areas, you don't get everybody. So people in lower and middle income countries should not feel it's only them. We see it across the world. What COVID-19 did, the pandemic, as a turning point, is it all of a sudden made reliable and quality content easy, accessible, and often totally free of charge. Your role would be to be able to identify those sources where you can access it. I recall when I was still with the Pharmaceutical Society of South Africa, in those early days when we hosted a lot of webinars, we would forward the invitation to the webinar to our neighboring countries. So that's Lesotho, Eswatini, Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique, and say your members are welcome to join. And that for me was a way how we could share a resource, because it doesn't cost us anything. It's clinical information, it's good quality, and maybe those pharmacists can join in. A second component that we need to take into consideration is that all the examples that I've mentioned that could be easily accessible, most, if not all of the time, require reliable internet. And I think that is often the challenge we face in our lower and middle income countries. However, I've attended a global leadership summit a few years ago. So if you want to learn more about leadership, there's a good free option for you to consider. And one of the speakers was Strive Masiyiwa. And he is a Zimbabwean guy, and he was the founder of EcoNet Wireless. And in his talk, he explained how he suffered to get approval from the Zimbabwean government to make internet accessible for the people firstly in Zimbabwe and then on the African continent. And although it's an amazing story of how he persisted, and he went to jail for being persistent, and how at the end he was successful after 5 or more years, it's a sad story that something that could have been in the hands of people 5 years ago had to go through such a struggle to become a reality. And I think that is a global challenge where access and enabling options are often withheld for reasons that we might not understand. So if you find yourself in a situation where other people limit your internet access or your access to the world or whatever, then my advice is work with what you have. This is again a season. It's not the rest of your life. It's a season. And what opportunities could you consider? And if there's really nothing else, remember, I've been a student lecturer myself. So I know that when you lecture content, students don't always believe you, and that they don't think it's worthy of what you're telling them. So if you have nothing else to educate yourself on, then I would suggest you take your pharmacology textbook again and you start reading it from the beginning until your season change and that you have access to other things.
Thank you very much for answering the questions and for also the little story that you mentioned about the summit that you attended. So continuing on this question, we will circle into the next section, which will focus around leadership, fellowship, and international engagement. That means what does it actually mean to be a leader at a global level and a leader within your own community? So you were awarded an FIP fellowship for outstanding international leadership and contribution to pharmaceutical sciences. What did that particular recognition mean to you, and what responsibility does it carry towards you, starting from that moment, continuing into right now?
Thank you. I am indeed truly honored to have received the fellowship award from FIP in 2021. At that stage, I was the second South African to receive fellowship from FIP. And I also received it in my 30s, which I really understand is a privilege, where other people really receive it much later in their careers. So I do appreciate it, and I do thank FIP for that honor. But with any great opportunity, or in this case, an award of this stature, it brings along with it great responsibility. And we often think that an award like this marks the end of something, but actually you just shift gears and it starts a new process, and you refer to it as, the responsibility that come with it. And often people don't think about it like that. But use an example. if your hero receives an Academy Award for Best Actor or Best Actress, and you're so proud and you're so happy that they win the award, and then the next day in the newspaper, you read about how they maybe lost the trophy, or they stole a cool drink, or they broke into someone's car. I'm sure your impression of that hero is scattered. Um, and we often see it then that even then the association that gave the award will distance them from that person. Why? Because what they portray, or what the character is showing, does not sit well with the values of the organization. So although I did receive this, and the award itself is based on what I did, there's a whole new responsibility that's coming from that day forward, because I, as an individual, now need to align myself. Hopefully I'm already done it, but continue to align myself with the values of FIP. And I need to carry with responsibility the reputation and the credibility of FIP with me everywhere that I go, in everything that I do. And that is also part of accepting that award, is I agree to uphold what the values is that FIP stands for, what it is that you saw in me when you offer me this award, and to make sure that I continue from this day forward, inspiring others to also accept these values, and to share this common cause that we have of advancing pharmacy worldwide. So it's definitely an honor, and I hope I will do FIP proud wherever I go in the pharmacy profession for the rest of my life.
Thank you very much for this, I would say, a little bit emotional answer to the question. It's obvious that the fellowship means a lot to you and that it was a major marker in your career. So thank you again for having shared this with us. Continuing into the last section of our interview before the closing, regarding specifically the future of pharmacy and advice for the early career pharmacists. You've been previously described as combining enthusiasm for the profession, sharp intellect, and international experience from a young age. What habits or mindset have been the most instrumental to your trajectory, and what would you like to share with us regarding this particular point?
Great. Thank you very much, first of all, for that description. I am humbled by it. So thank you very much. I really would love to share a few pearls of wisdom. So I would say the first, I would not call it a habit, but my exposure to being involved in a profession or in a community is really coming from my parents. I grew up in a family, in a household where my dad specifically, he's a farmer in South Africa. He was quite involved in his agricultural societies or associations. And even today, he's actually retired, but he still acts as a director at a prominent South African agricultural enterprise, where he contributes his lifelong expertise to this organization. He's the chair of the Risk and Audit Committee, which is a very responsible position. My mother, however, she exited her career when she was pregnant with me. And although afterwards she joined my dad in the farming business, she was quite involved in the community and also in the faith community. She's part of the ladies Bible study groups, and she organized fundraisers in the faith community. So I think that was my first involvement, and that is where I've seen the example that one should be involved in the areas around you. The second maybe habit that I can add, also coming from my parents, is really a set of characteristics. And it comes down to a previous answer that I gave, know who you are, and what it is that you stand for, what it is that you believe in. So things like integrity. When you said you will show up, do you actually show up? Are you consistent and reliable? Are you ethical? I remember one colleague, a senior colleague in the profession here in South Africa, called me, or she referred to me as having an ethical compass that's on point. And that's really an amazing compliment to receive. And to always do the right thing in the right way. And I'm someone that never takes a shortcut, not even when I renovated my house. Did I try to get things done quickly? There were some cupboards that we had to rebuild 3 times because it was not right. But if I can give 3 points to or share 3 pieces of advice to your ECPG colleagues. Firstly, I would say be sure of the people you surround yourself with. There's a saying that goes that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So think about it. If those 5 people are positive, you're probably going to be positive. If they are negative or pessimistic, you're probably going to be negative and pessimistic. If it's okay to cut corners or be unethical, you're probably also going to be like that. So make sure you surround yourself with great people, and also great mentors. And those does not only have to be people from the profession. It can also be senior people in your community, maybe even younger people in your community. Be diverse, but make sure that you have great people that you can look up to in your life. I'm really thankful for many senior pharmacists in my profession that I could have confidential meetings with when times were tough, and ask them objectively for guidance. And I don't know how I would have done it without them. The second point I want to leave people with is Nelson Mandela said, be the change you want to see in the world. And that is maybe very applicable for someone in advocacy, because it's about leading by example. And instead of complaining, we all face maybe corrupt governments, maybe we face unethical colleagues. So the troubles are a lot, but you can make a difference and you can bring change where you are, although you think it's impossible. And then the last thing is about yourself. And I love the saying, we are what we repeatedly do. So maybe you will say you're an ethical person, but every day you hand out medication without a prescription, or you overcharge some of your clients. So take a step back and look at yourself, because that's what you do every day. That is actually what is defining you. So it's not only words, it's also actions. And actions speak louder than words.
So thank you very much for again wrapping up your answer with let's say quite the powerful messages and quite the powerful advices. So I think we have reached the tail end of our interview. So as a final closing question, Do you have any final message to give for the early career pharmacist, either reading this interview or listening to it, so that we can leave them off with one last piece of advice from you?
I will leave you with this message. If you love your job, you will never have to work a day in your life.
It's actually very, very, very good. Very short, very sweet, and actually very good. And I can personally attest to that because I am currently working as a teacher. So I love doing my job. So I never see it as a job. I see it as me doing a hobby or me doing something I like. And the joy I have with my students is very much something I appreciate. So
Exactly.
I can personally, really personally and professionally relate to what you have said right now. So, with this on, we have officially finished our interview. So, thank you very much for your availability, for your really wonderful contribution to our interview cycle. It has been my pleasure to conduct this interview with you and to be present during this 50-minute session, if we can say that. So it's been long, but I think it's been super sweet. And again, very much a learning experience for all of us here.